So it's 1 captain and 2 lieutenants per detachment. Land speeders have had their datasheets separated out, and something funny is going on with cataphractite Terminators. Today we'll talk about a few more details from the new Space Marine Codex. Hello and welcome back to Auspex Tactics, the strategy focused 40k channel, where we're all about getting the most out of our miniatures on the tabletop. Today we're going to take a look at several of the other details from Codex Space Marines that Games Workshop revealed to us on Saturday in that announcement video where they spooled through the Codex for us. In the video I'll talk about the Captain change, the changes to the datasheets for Land Speeders and Predators, changes to cataphractite Terminators and the Terminator Captain, some new secondary objectives for Space Marines, and a few other bits and bobs. Plenty to discuss, so let's get right into it. First of all, Space Marine army lists appear to have gained one extra restriction. You now have the Company Command special rule, which all Adeptus Astartes detachments get, and it means that you can't have more than 1 captain and 2 lieutenants in the same detachment. The rule isn't too dissimilar from the Tau Commander rule, which I think Games Workshop brought in at the time to prevent people spamming them, because they delivered some very good firepower for their points cost. I honestly think that this might have been more of a thematic choice this time round. There are certainly armies and army lists that do like to use multiple captains, particularly things like Blood Angel Smash Captains, or maybe Space Wolf Wolf Lords. In general, I don't think it's going to be too onerous to sidestep these rules. Just say take a captain and lieutenant rather than 2 captains, or take your 2 captains and 2 separate detachments. It could be a small irritation though for some lists, who might ideally want 2 very fighty characters leading their forces, and they want them to be able to bear certain relics or war gear options. In general, in those cases, it is going to make lieutenants a bit more popular, or perhaps encourage people to dig into their own special characters, or the various other HQ options such as chaplains or librarians perhaps. I'm sure quite a lot of captain models could be proxied as lieutenants as well, if you absolutely wanted to include models that you already own in your list. Next, they very helpfully showed us a table of contents for the new codex, and it listed every single datasheet that was available in the book. The datasheets have seen a hefty increase. There are now apparently a whopping 96 datasheets in Codex Space Marines, up from 76 in the previous version. This is thanks in no small part to the induction of the Indomitus units, but also some of the changes that they've made to existing datasheets and how they can be taken in the new decks. It seems that for whatever reason they've chosen to separate out the datasheets for Land Speeders and Predator tanks. Now, they did used to have their own datasheets in the past, but that hasn't been the case for really quite a long while since. The Land Speeders can now be taken as the standard Land Speeder datasheet, the Land Speeder Tornado, which you can see on the right with an underslung weapon under its carapace, or the Land Speeder Typhoon, the one with the Typhoon missile launchers on each side. It is quite interesting that you're now going to be able to field absolutely loads of Land Speeders. Theoretically, if they could still be squadroned and you were using the rule of 3, you could run up to 27 Land Speeders if the points limit allowed. I'm not sure if that was really much of a restriction for anyone, but it's certainly gone now. Similarly, the Predator datasheets have also been separated, and now there are separate ones for the Predator Annihilator with the twin las cannon on the turret, and the Predator Destructor with the autocannon. I kind of hope that the sponsons are still de-restricted on the Predators, as previously you used to only be able to use the Predator Annihilator with 4 las cannons, and the Destructor could take the heavy bolters and you couldn't mix and match. That hasn't been the case for several versions of the Space Marine Codex, and I myself own one with the autocannon and las cannon sponsons, so I'm personally hoping that that's still able to be taken in that configuration. Again, with the rule of 3, it means that you could really go nuts with Predators in this edition. You could have a list with 6 Predator tanks in it out of the core Codex, or even up that to 9 if you included the Blood Angel's Baal Predator. I'm really not sure what the logic was in separating out these different datasheets. Part of me wants to say that it could be done so you could differentiate the power level of the different units. But honestly, the Predator autocannon and the twin las cannon have basically the same points cost anyway, so I'd imagine that they would still have the same power level. Maybe it might be a bit more of a thing for power level for the Land Speeders, seeing as it is a bit different if you're actually packing a second weapon or not, but still it seems to me like a bit of an unnecessary change really. It does very much seem to be the way that they're going with this though, as it's what they've done for the new Gladiator tanks and also the 3 versions of Storm Speeder. Next up we have some changes to cataphractite Terminators and some changes to captains. These guys seem to have gone the opposite way. Rather than having Tartarus or cataphractite Terminators in the new Space Marine Codex, we instead seem to have got a Relic Terminator squad. I can only imagine that this squad will be able to choose whether or not they're wearing Tartarus or cataphractite armour and be able to get the relative bonus for that. Seems like that could be a pretty hefty datasheet though, with all the options that they have. I was kind of interested to see whether or not the Captain and Lieutenant from the Indomitus box might have their own unique datasheet. It seems that isn't the case. They're just going to be included along with the regular Primaris Captain and Primaris Lieutenant. I would guess that they'll probably just have some fairly restrictive datasheet options. maybe just in the way that they usually seem to do with characters now, with a single bullet point on the datasheet saying you can replace your captain's war gear with a relic shield, mastercrafted power sword and heavy bolt pistol, for example. It would be quite nice if at some point they could just make it very de-restricted though, and allow you to fully mix and match weapons and storm shields. Finally, it would seem that the Cataphracti captain has gone to Legends. This one wasn't too surprising. Games Workshop don't sell him anymore. He used to come out of the Betrayal at Calth set, so I expect to see his datasheet cropping up in Warhammer Legends at some point. Finally, just a few more bits and bobs that I noticed from the spool through of the Codex. It would appear that the warlord traits, litanies, psychic powers and relics don't seem to have changed all that much. Aside from their wording being cleaned up a fair bit, I couldn't see anything that was drastically different. If you have spotted anything though, then please let me know. As far as I can tell, that the same options were all available, and they all seem to do pretty much the same thing. Psychic powers do seem to have been clarified as either witchfires or blessings, though I don't think that this will have any effect on the way that they're played. It's interesting out of these lists that quite a lot of the abilities listed either core chapter units or chapter characters, and it's interesting that some of the chapter litanies and psychic powers can affect core and character units. We all know what characters are, but I'll be interested to see the exact definition of a core unit. I wonder if it might be excluding things like servitors or chapter super heavies, for example. One other thing that I thought was quite interesting is that you can now pick your own unique secondary objectives for which codex you're in. There is a matched play section of the codex which seems to talk you through these rules. It definitely says that you can take them in the Eternal War mission pack, and I think that just off the screen in their preview we will be able to use them as well in the Grand Tournament mission pack. It would be a bit silly to have it in the match play section without that being an option. The only one that you could see clearly was an option called Codex Warfare, which was 1 victory point each for destroying enemy units with heavy weapons and grenade weapons in the Devastator Doctrine, and the same for assault and rapid fire weapons in the Tactical Doctrine, and melee weapons and pistols in the Assault Doctrine. Realistically, I think that this would be fairly hard to max, and probably would only be a good pick in the first place if you had a fair bit of weapon variety and did plan on going through all the doctrines. So this one isn't particularly the strongest, but I'm not entirely sure I'm the biggest fan of having unique secondary objectives for individual codexes. If they wind up being anything like those unique Maelstrom objectives that they had in the last edition, then I'm sure some factions will get much easier secondaries than others, and they might be almost auto picks in some situations. I just prefer all the armies to be working off at least the same mission objectives, and have the balance in between the strengths of the armies, rather than between the strengths of the objectives that they can achieve. Hopefully they'll just keep them to be relatively low-key ones that you use in some situations, but quite rarely, and I really hope that they don't go just giving out very easy ones to achieve, which could be a bit frustrating if you're playing against an army that has very easy secondaries available. Finally, I'd just like to mention the interesting positioning of the Space Marine Scout datasheet within the table of contents. For some reason they're listed 2 spaces below Tactical Marines, just below the Company Champion. Some people have been saying that this implies that Scouts might be moved to Elite choice now, but I don't think this is the case myself. I suspect what's happened is that they're just at the top of the page after Tactical Marines, and Company Champions are at the bottom, and then they've just put them in alphabetical order. If Scouts move to an Elite slot, then that would be a big shake-up for a lot of lists, but based on this I don't think that it's that likely. So let me know what you think of these changes then, and particularly let us all know if there's anything else that I've missed in this video. I wouldn't be too surprised if there were a few more gems hidden away in that video. If you've enjoyed the video, then feel free to subscribe to Auspex Tactics, where we'll be continuing our 40k Tactics content going into 9th edition. And if you have been enjoying my channel and watching regularly, then any support on the channel's Patreon page is massively appreciated. As well as allowing me to continue making new videos, channel patrons get to see 1 new video early each week. There's regular votes to see what sort of videos I make next, and you also get automatically entered into the Auspex Tactics prize giveaway, which happens at the start of each month. If any of that sounds good, or you'd just like to help support the channel, then the link is down in the video description below. In any case, a massive thank you for listening, and I'll hope to see you guys next time.